Hi D&D fans, I'm Sparkle's Devil Monster, and I'm reviewing back issues of Dragon Magazine in a quest to find some of the best material for use in my current 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons game. So today, before we review what is quite possibly the worst issue of Dragon Magazine, issue number 3 from 1976, let's go back and take a closer look at the Rummer Has, which we first encountered in issue number 2 of Dragon Magazine. So the Rummer Has does indeed exist in 5th edition D&D. It's been updated to have challenge rating 11, 17 armor class, 195 hit points, plus 7 strength bonus, tremor sense, a burrow speed. So again, it's going to go underground and then come up and surprise your party. And it has the heated body feature. So any creature that attacks at a melee combat is going to take 10 fire damage. This is actually nerfed considerably since 1st edition, when the Rummer Has, if you strike it on its back, it melts your non-magical weapon, rendering it useless slag. So for those dungeon masters out there who like homebrew, who like converting older editions into 5th edition D&D, you may want to buff your Rummer Has by having it do just that and destroy any non-magical weapons that hit it on its back. But they also gave it some cool abilities. It can bite adventurers, and then it holds them, it pins them in its mouth, automatically grappling them. And then on the second turn, it attacks again that same bitten creature, and if it hits, the Rummer Has swallows that creature. And it takes 66 acid damage in its stomach while the adventurer tries probably futilely to fight its way out from the inside. However, if the Rummer Has is killed, the adventurer can exit the Rummer Has's body, and it exits it prone. And no one knows whether the adventurer exits out the mouth or out the rear end of the Rummer Has. I suppose that's up to the player. So anyway, that's the Rummer Has, but let's move on to issue number 3, which sadly doesn't have a cool monster like the Rummer Has, or really much of anything else that we're going to be able to use here in modern 5th edition games. You can see here the cover art is a rocket ship headed towards a planet with rings. And I suppose it's somewhat evocative. It shows that there are many prime material worlds, many Dungeons & Dragons planets you can visit. And I'll zoom in on this. You can see that this is the magazine for science fiction, gaming, swords and sorcery, and fantasy. So back in '76, Gary Gygax, the creator of D&D, and other creators of D&D, thought that it would be perfectly useful as a role-playing game system for non-fantasy gaming, stuff like kind of like Star Trek, right? Standard science fiction. So that's why they had that there, but you know, unless you're using the old Spelljammer rules or something, I don't see people doing a lot of space travel today in Dungeons & Dragons. So after the cover art, I like to look for a villain first. It's nice to build adventures around a villain. And sadly, issue 3 didn't really deliver much of a villain. It has a lot of new classes in it. And I don't know if this is meant as a joke, but it introduces the idiot class for players. If you want to be an idiot and gain levels as one, I suppose you could. I don't see an idiot making a particularly frightening villain, but I suppose you could have one join the party. It says an idiot is obtained by paying 160 gold pieces at the beginning of the game or in a city, if an idiot is present. So there's only a 50% chance of there being a village idiot for you to hire for 160 gold pieces. The player also has the opportunity of buying a midget for 200 gold pieces. The idiot's purpose is to confuse the enemy so that it will run away, attack a wall, commit harakiri, which they misspell as harikari, which means belly slicing. It isn't really the term that was used in Japan to refer to suicide. Eat all its treasure or some related act. So I'm not sure how the idiot is going to confuse an enemy to run away, attack a wall, commit suicide, eat all its treasure, or some related act, whatever that might be, just so it will not attack the troop, which must mean the party. That must be 1970s speak for the party of adventurers. There is a 15% chance that the monster will attack anyhow. And then the idiots can gain levels. They start out as a dummy at level 1, then they become a dope, adult, a dullard, a cluck, a klutz, a cretin, a weirdo, a nut, a fool, an imbecile, and finally a true idiot. There is only one idiot per expedition. The idiot melees as a man -2 and delivers at best 1 point of damage. So yeah, I suppose if you really want to use an idiot, you could have them just get the party into trouble. It would sort of turn into a comedy at that point. It might ruin the tone of your game. But if you want more of a real villain, after idiot, there's another new class, the Jester. And the Jester is described as an amusing little fellow. The best jesters are dwarfs. So there's kind of a lot of prejudice here against midgets and dwarves, I suppose. Maybe disabled people more generally. But the Jester actually has a whole bunch of abilities. Some of them are quite lethal, like the killer joke. So yeah, an evil court jester could make a decent villain. But yeah, this category just doesn't do it for me. It doesn't sparkle. Now, what I do like out of these new classes is the Samurai class on page 25 of Dragon number 3. So the Samurai class is particularly appealing to me for a couple of reasons. One, it was the strongest class I had played as a child, playing Wizardry, Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord, the first wizardry in the famed computer RPG series. They were just really good. And then later in life, I had the opportunity to live a few years in Japan and visited some villages and some museums. Actually got to visit the Iga village where the ninja clan came from. The Iga and the Koga were two famous ninja clans. But I learned a little bit about samurai, and I bought a couple of samurai swords, which sadly I had to pawn before leaving the country. I couldn't bring them on the plane like Uma Thurman and Kill Bill. And of course, pawning your samurai swords was like, in ancient Japan, was a grave form of dishonor. But as I was reduced to doing that because I wasn't just going to leave them on the side of the road outside the airport. But anyway, in first edition D&D with the samurai class, if the samurai loses his katana by any means, including theft, the samurai has two choices. So the player has to decide this mutually with the game master, and it must be a unanimous decision. The player must either pursue a vendetta against the thief or commit seppuku, so disembowel himself. Usually you want a second nearby to cut off your head after you've done that. Otherwise, it's a very long and agonizing death. People can actually live for quite a while holding their intestines outside their body. So yeah, the samurai class is in here. They've got 2-weapon fighting. They can ride horses. They know judo, which is rad. You can throw your enemy on the ground and follow up with jujitsu and choke them out or break their limbs. They use the longbow or yumi, standing, kneeling, or on horseback. So it's a cool class, and I'm glad it's in first edition D&D. So then I'm looking for an NPC. There are scribes described on page 24. And they're pretty pointless, especially now that wizards can transcribe their own spells. It looks like you used to have to hire an NPC scribe to produce a spell book. And they were expensive, 1,000 to 5,000 gold pieces per month. But being free souls, there's a 5% chance cumulative each month that the scribe will leave, necessitating a new job search. So you have pretty bad turnover in the scribe department. This chance is doubled in the event of an alignment difference. You need to call in HR to deal with these scribes. And in addition to that, if the scribe goes insane because wizard spells drive you crazy, and this insanity is detectable only by ESP, extrasensory perception, which I think was a spell back in the day, the chance that they make a mistake in transcribing the spell, thereby rendering it ineffective, goes to 100%. So you're paying a ton of money for an employee who's going to leave at the first opportunity, who might go mad, and then all his work was for naught, and you just wasted all that money. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of scribes. All right, so anyway, enough with the NPCs. Let's take a look at some world building material. On page 14, Dragon Magazine number 3 describes birth tables. What are birth tables? Well, early D&D was full of random tables for the DM to roll on, or even players in creating their characters. And the birth tables describe the birth order of your character and who he was born to. So you could be the firstborn son of a nobleman, or you could be the middle child of a merchant, or you could just be a bastard, like Jon Snow. And then there's a whole other table for your father's occupation. That's very important. Just so many occupations listed here for your dad's job. Your father could be a vagabond or a serf, perhaps a miner or a slaver, a bird trainer, or a spy tracker. I guess it's like counterintelligence, like your dad's a medieval FBI agent, the employee of the king. A magistrate, right? So a judge. Your dad could be Don Juan, like actually Don Juan, the fictional character, or just a playboy, maybe is what they mean, or a dream interpreter or an astrologer, even a bowyer, a mason, a cartographer, or a jeweler. So many possible occupations for your father. Of course, your character is just an adventurer who's going to get eaten by a monster in a maze somewhere. All right, so that was birth tables. Then I'm looking for a dungeon. And the only dungeon I found in Dragon number 3 was this cartoon dungeon here. It's a multi-panel cartoon dungeon where a monster sneaks up on the thief who is listening at the door and inspecting it for traps, and he eats all of the thief's party members one by one, going by reverse party order. So I actually kind of like this idea as a DM. It's pretty dastardly. Maybe my players would rebel if I did it to them. But the next time they're in a dungeon and they're listening at all the doors and inspecting them all for traps, and it's kind of taking a while, I might just have some of the monsters from like room 13 like circle around and get them from behind with a sneak attack, right? I'll roll stealth versus their passive perception and see if they can sneak up on them. So that's the dungeon. Then a monster, not a very good monster in here, I gotta say. The only thing that really counts, and humans can be monsters according to the 5th edition monster manual, is the tavern drunk. So there's a story Here you go. This guy is hanging out with what is described as a buxom barmaid, getting his tankards of ale, and a surly drunk who's well into his cups approaches him and pretends that he's insulted him in some small way, but just as a pretext for starting a fight. So, you know, bar fights in D&D, you've probably done them all before, but there's ways to make them more interesting, especially if you involve grappling, non-lethal damage, maybe one of the drunks grabs up some object that's close at hand, a broom or a glass or some silverware or a chunk of meat, and then has an improvised weapon with which to beat your player characters. So, you know, that could make it a little more interesting. Instead of doing 1 point of damage, they're doing a d4 with an improvised weapon. Yeah, you know, we've all done tavern drunks before, so they don't really do much for me. Next, I'm looking for a spell. And there is a spell. It's called the Ball Buster. It's a 7th level spell available to the new Jester class. The Ball Buster is a joke that takes 3 rounds to tell. In 5th edition, rounds are 6 seconds long. I think in 1st edition, they were 60 seconds. So it's a 3-minute long joke, or maybe an 18-second long joke, somewhere in between. I'm not quite sure. But the Ball Buster, when you tell it, causes the target to fall to the ground stunned, like Tasha's uncontrollable hideous laughter, which I think now is just Tasha's uncontrollable laughter. She's no longer hideous. So that's the Ball Buster as a spell. And then for a magic item, the Jester gets laughing gas balls, which he can juggle and then throw 30 feet, and they explode, again causing the uncontrollable laughter. So Jester's kind of a one-trick pony in that regard. Overall, I know I spent a lot of time on this issue, but it was the worst issue as far as I can tell in all of Dragon Magazine, issue number 3. Perhaps you can tell me where I went wrong in the comments and how it's actually wonderful. Or maybe there's some other issue of Dragon Magazine that's even worse than number 3, but I doubt it. Yeah, I'm going to say it doesn't sparkle, but I'll leave you with one last je ne sais quoi for the issue, and that's this lovely cartoon lass. Her puckered lips are shaped exactly like a heart for some reason. Maybe she had plastic surgery. And this is a section entitled Notes on Women in Magic, Bringing the Dice Staff Gamer into D&D. So that's a weird way to refer to female gamers. They're dice staff gamers. I don't really know what a dice staff is, right? I think it's used for weaving. Anyway, a dice staff is women's work, and I don't need to know what it is. But women, they can advance as fighters, but they're never as good as men. It flat out says that. They have a statistic called beauty instead of charisma. Women don't get charisma, they only get beauty in 1st edition D&D. And exceptional beauty is important to thieves, for obvious reasons. And only chaotic clerics can use their beauty score. Otherwise, the beauty of the woman doesn't matter if she's a cleric. And they have various names. So the clerics could be a deaconess, a canoness, a prioress, a matriarch. If you're a thief, which is 1st edition rogue, and a woman, you could be a wench, a hag, a jade. That's strange. Little Orientalist. A succubus, an adventuress, a soothsayer, a gypsy, or a sibyl. So, yeah. For magic users, a mystic, an oracle, an enchantress, a sorceress, or a witch. For fighters, a battle maiden, a shield maiden, a heroine, a Valkyrie, or a war lady. And only female characters have tarot reading as an ability. That's a special ability they have. Magic users have the Charm Man spell instead of Charm Person. They also have Seduction, at various levels, up to 8th. Women with a lower beauty score than given in the chart cannot seduce the given man of the other race. So miscegenation is harder if you're ugly. I think that's what it's trying to say. Female orc thieves cannot seduce an elf nor a fighter. It gets really complicated from there. So I think we'll just leave it at that. No, this does not sparkle. This is a 2 out of 10 issue of Dragon Magazine. And my apologies for the long review, but it was just that bad. We had to go into it in detail. So I will see you next time for Dragon number 4, which is at least slightly better. And around Dragon 5, they start getting real good. So we'll find some more useful stuff then.